Welcome to the latest edition of the Giants Hangout, our weekly roundtable discussion as we recap the previous game and also look ahead while focusing on three themes. And a tough loss for the Giants in Western New York as they fell to 1-5 with a 14-9 loss to the Buffalo Bills. Today, we're going to focus on red zone issues. We're going to focus on the defensive performance overall and how they kept that Bills offense in check, and also strides that the offensive line made to help the Giants move the ball with Tyrod Taylor at the controls. Lance Meadow, Russ Salzberg, Howard Cross with you. And Howard, I want to start with you because to me, one of the most prevalent themes coming out of this game is you look at the box score. The Giants were 0 for 5 in the red zone. The Bills were 2 for 2. And if you didn't watch any of this game, I would say that pretty much tells the whole story. There were opportunities for the Giants to put more points on the board, and unfortunately, they could not punch it in. They settled for 3 field goals, and 2 of those opportunities, of course, which came at the end of the first half and the end of the game, they walked away empty-handed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just a couple of mistakes trying to get things done, figuring out you had offensive line issues again, as Justin Pugh had to sub in to get guys, get everybody lined up. That kind of gave them some penalties there, getting really close to the red zone. They were down there pretty close. They had 2 or 3 penalties in a row, procedure penalties, but it's understandable. You were on the couch, you come in to play guard, then you move to tackle. You might be a little jumpy, so I don't really fault him in that aspect. The other issue was I think that they got down there, had a chance, especially at the end of the half, to score, and I think Tyrod checked out of the pass and checked to run, and I don't know if he realized that, I don't know if he didn't realize they didn't have any more timeouts, or he thought maybe they had enough time to get the playoff, but you had 14 seconds, you run into the middle. There's no way to get, nobody's getting up quick if you're playing defense. They're holding you down. So that kind of changed the flow of the game. As far as them, to drive it into the end zone, I thought they did, like I said, again, the offense played relatively well, except for scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, Howard, you bring up a good point about I'm glad you brought up about the offensive line because as Lance mentioned, we were 0 for 5, Giants were 0 for 5 in the red zone. But as the game was going, in particular, when we moved on into the second half, after that debacle at the end of the first half, I saw a little, I don't know if when it comes to the offensive line, if you call it rhythm, I'll call it cohesiveness, but I just sensed they were in a groove, that they were playing better. I marked down in the first half, I think Saquon, he had I think 3 negative -2. He had maybe 1 +1. He had 2 no gains. But in fairness to Saquon, they were on him before he got the ball in that first half. But then I thought, as you say, the third quarter, fourth quarter, all of a sudden there was a cohesiveness and the offensive line started to play better. I'll ask you this, being a former player, it seems almost Pop Warnerish, but when you're down in a situation like that, is it up to the quarterback? Is it up to the coaches to remind everybody, guys, we have no timeouts left. We got to be smart. You can't get caught. You have to throw the ball. Where does that lie, Howard?
I think it's on everybody, but I think what happens is Tyrod gets in the game. He lines up at the line of scrimmage. He probably knows it's 14 seconds. He probably knows that they don't have any more timeouts. He has all that down, and they give a look in the front that takes him away from the play that he has. So he checks to whatever the next check is, unless he knows another pass to check to. With no timeouts, he has to do something. So he probably checks to the run. He checks to the play that's supposed to work in that situation if blocked up. So again, offensive line aside, I'm not faulting them for that. They played a pretty good game, but they were up against a pretty good defensive front. Check into a run right there. If it doesn't work, it's all or nothing in that kind of situation.
Yeah, and that's what Tyrod Taylor mentioned after the game. He was asked by reporters. He said that he alerted the offense to go from a pass to a run because he saw the front that you mentioned, Howard. And I think my interpretation of that is he almost got lost in the flow of the game where you were reminded you don't have any timeouts. You see the look. You maybe tend to forget where you are in the game because you're so focused on the X's and O's. And Saquon got the handoff, and unfortunately, they ran out of time. He did acknowledge Tyrod Taylor, though. He said he thought they would have had enough time to line back up and spike the ball, but clearly that did not come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, when in that situation, you would hope that he would, take it, be like, okay, this is a run play. We could run it here, but we don't have time. So I'm going to snap it and just throw it into the stands because, they got it diagnosed defensively. I can see they have it diagnosed defensively. Take the snap and just throw it into the stands. Or even drop back and it's like, okay, walk up to the line and say shotgun, shotgun, shotgun to snap it to make sure that nobody gets to him really quickly. He has time to throw it into the stands because sometimes they get hit in their second step of the three-step drop. Give himself some room to protect himself. But that's neither here nor there. That's like, I mean, he's a veteran. I mean, he knows. He looked at the clock, 14 seconds. I think in theory, you need 16 seconds to get a field goal team. And here's the reason why. You have to remember that. I think the rule is like 15 to 16 seconds to kick a field goal when you don't have any time on the clock. We had 14 seconds.
Yep.
Not only did we have 14 seconds, we had 14 seconds and everybody was still on the field, right? Usually in that situation, when you can't spike the ball, you can run guys from the sideline onto the field and kick the field goal, but you've thrown a pass, right? The ball's incomplete. Everybody's running from the sideline to get on. The kickers are running on. The receivers are running off. The extra guys, the wing guys are running on, and then you get the ball, snap, kick, field goal. That's the operation. The operation doesn't work the same if you run the ball. Because if you run the ball, then you're dependent on the defensive players to get up off of you, and they don't try to move if they don't have to.
Yeah, Howard, Howard, your old coach, Bill Parcells, as you know very well, used to say, "No medals for trying," and that's the deal. The Giants are what they are, and right now they're 1-5. But that said, that was a gutsy performance, particularly on the defensive end. They stopped an assassin for a quarterback, and they stopped an explosive offense. It was a tremendous defensive effort. And what impressed me, I saw completely, I've been complaining since we've been doing this about the poor tackling. I didn't see that last night. I saw guys going to the ball, guys making hits, guys making stops. It was a much improved effort. And as I say, Parcells would say no medals for trying. But I think moving forward, now fans and even the coaching staff, I think they can feel a little gaining confidence because we got to see what we kind of expected the Giants defense to be like this year.
Yeah, they're gang tackling. They're getting everybody to the ball. They're getting a lot of guys in the camera shot, as we say. That's the most important thing about defense. It's not a one man making a play. It's a group of guys making a play. You can get those outstanding plays where a guy makes a single tackle, but what you usually get is a bunch of guys running to the ball. And when the ball carrier looks up or the receiver looks up, he sees a lot of bodies, and that's when you get your chance to make big plays and big hits on them. And you saw it over and over again. They also did a great job of making the quarterback scramble to his left. When he goes to his right, Josh Allen is deadly. You saw the two plays where he zips the ball back across his body. But when he goes to the left and turns his body, he doesn't really throw the ball as well. And he missed a few throws there and even had a ball tipped for 2 tips for interceptions kind of going to his left. So, they did a great job trying to force him to his left as much as possible. The 1 or 2 times he got out contained, he made plays.
Well, you look at Bobby Okereke's performance. He was all over the place, extremely active. So to Russ's point about being encouraged by the defensive performance, also being encouraged by getting return on a free agent addition, which I think is key. And this is now the second straight game where he's gotten hands on balls. He's been opportunistic. I mean, he and Micah McFadden combined for both takeaways. The problem is, and I think last night's game brought this back to the forefront, as good as the defense performed, and tip of the cap to holding the Bills to 14 points, it's almost as if they have to be perfect or they have to score themselves because, guys, you look at the 2 takeaways. The Giants offense only scored 3 points, and they had favorable field position. And then number 2, as good as the defense was, to your point, Howard, in keeping Josh Allen in check, believe it or not, and I think this gets lost in translation, Josh Allen only had 1 incompletion in the second half. That was the miss to Dawson Knox, which could have sealed the game for the Bills when he was short. He didn't put enough
Right.
mustard on that pass. That was it. He was 11 of 12, and he orchestrated 2 touchdown drives. So this is not to knock the Giants defense. It's to further show, as good as they were, you still needed 2 or 3 more plays out of them because of the offensive struggles right now.
Well, Lance, I hear you, and that's the theme of a lot of people that I hear on radio, TV, and stuff about the offensive struggles of the Giants. What you saw last night was offensive improvement, and that's something that you can't really poo-poo and look at. You didn't have your starting quarterback in. You had a guy come in off the couch. They actually held up. There wasn't like 5 sacks, 6 sacks, 7 sacks, 8 sacks. He had time to throw the ball. That's movement. You had a Waller getting involved in the game. You had Slayton going down the field deep, taking shots. If he could have got a little more air on the ball, you may have had a touchdown from Hyatt, because Hyatt had a step on the coverage guys, but the ball kind of fell short late in the game. Slayton doesn't really jump to get the ball, lets the ball come into his body. If he jumps to get it, catch it at a high point, it's just different. There's a play here and a play there that they're getting closer and closer to. But the most encouraging thing was how the offensive line played. Buffalo's defense is a much better defense than some of the defenses they've seen this year outside of Dallas and San Francisco. They're like probably the 3rd best defense in that group. There were no sacks, or they may have credited them for a couple sacks. There was no 1,000 quarterback hits. None of that happened. Once they start to settle. And the other thing that makes that not happen is Saquon being in the game. You can't bring everybody to the table when Saquon's in the game. Either you're going to have to give up the deep throw, or you're going to have to commit up for everybody. The more healthy people get onto the offense, the better the offense is going to look. They weren't supposed to be playing with backups. And I'm not beating on those guys, but they weren't supposed to be playing with backups. We saw in the preseason. They just didn't hold up.
One guy we also should mention, and a lot of us, I know I have, a lot of people have been barking, we want to see more from Jalen Hyatt. We got to see that young man last night, and he needs to be involved. He can catch a ball, and he certainly has racehorse speed. I mean, the kid can play.
Yeah, but that's a product of the offensive line player. You know whose name you didn't hear a lot of last night? Evan Neal. Evan Neal did a good job. I don't know if it's his knee or his ankle, whatever's been hurting him, but I saw him. Yeah, I've seen him play against some premier rush ends. I'm thinking like, if they could just hold up, and I'm like, oh, he's moving good. Okay, so he's feeling better. He's playing better. Whoever they slid out there, left tackle, was trying to make it. I hope Azudu's foot's okay, or his toes okay. Justin moves out there. I'm thinking like, man, he looks so small, but he held up. And the other thing was, he had some fight about him. He was playing slightly angry. He had a little bit of an attitude about him when he was playing, which was, you've been watching it a lot. We've seen the defense start to get an attitude when guys like trying to shove him after the play. And I'm not promoting fighting or anything, but when Justin comes in, his attitude's different, and the other guys' attitudes start to pick up alongside of him. So that changed a lot. I mean, the last drive when they went in, even though they didn't score, they come out and they're knocking fists like, okay, guys, let's go get them. I'm like, wow, the offensive line has a different attitude. You can actually see it. And they were trying to get after him again. Need to have some better execution from all the skill guys, quarterback, receivers, everybody. But it looked a little different. You saw Saquon gashing them. They had started to get confidence. And this is going to carry over. Hopefully this carries over and they keep getting better. Hopefully I don't know who they're going to bring in now.
You might be coming back, buddy.
I was thinking about that last night. I was like, oh my God, who's left? I mean, I guess they're going to have to bring a couple other guys in. I mean, another guy goes down. Parrott was hurt. Azudu went out. I really don't know who's left. I mean, they're going to have to. Somebody's going to come up from the practice squad. I'm sure they're searching other practice squads to bring other guys in. It's getting really interesting at the offensive line. If some of these guys don't get healthy and come back, it could be very interesting.
You bring up a good point about Justin Pugh, because to myself, I've been thinking about that pretty much the entire season. I know we've discussed it till we're blue in the face about the offensive line being depleted, but with Pugh in there last night, I felt, I don't know, even a little meanness. There was some juice to the offensive line. that I think has been lacking. I don't know if it's individual personalities or combined, but with Pugh in there last night, I saw like more feistiness in the offensive line than I've seen all season.
And no offense to all the guys that are playing, and I do mean that outside of Thomas and everything. No offense to all of them. It looked a lot different when a guy his quality of play lifted the other guys up so high. It's kind of like, when they had a bunch of other guys in there. I think of like Richie Soyberg coming back off the broken leg and having that crazy mean attitude when he went after it. It made the other guys like kind of meaner around him. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. Like Big Gates last year, if they had Nick around this year, it'd have been the same thing. Nick with his belly hanging out, running around.
Oh, you're right.
It just those guys with those attitudes, that little extra punch that they get after and smack talk, it makes the rest of the guys want to get a little harder too. So I appreciate that from him. I appreciate him, giving that kind of effort and that kind of personality back into that offensive line. It showed and it helped tremendously.
Well, Pugh's a veteran, and I think thankfully for him, he had some experience at left tackle early in his career, because it wouldn't have been fun, right? If he was just solely a guard and all of a sudden a few plays into the game, they kick you out to left tackle, because even he admitted after the game, clearly it's been several seasons since he played left tackle, and he did not practice at left tackle over the course of the week leading into the game. So it was a bit of uncharted territory for him. And I agree, he did provide that veteran leadership, that toughness. What I also think helped Howard, though, and this shouldn't go unnoticed, is Tyrod Taylor's mobility and then tending to move the pocket more often than not to alleviate the offensive line. Because as you mentioned, it wasn't that the Bills disrupted the game. And we saw that with previous opponents. They had 3 sacks, they had 5 quarterback hits. You can live with that. Those are numbers that are not overwhelming in comparison to what we saw to the Dolphins and the Seahawks in the previous 2 games. But I do think Taylor on the run, moving, that motion that he provided, did not allow Buffalo to be able to capitalize on. There were some close calls, but he at least continuously shifted the pocket. That's what at least jumped out to me.
It jumps out to you, but that's not his ability. That's the coaching, right?
Strategy,
so when coaches decide that they're going to roll away from a certain guy, he was rolling away from guys, but when he was rolling, there was nobody in pursuit half the time. That's what I was seeing. Even though you're rolling the pocket, you're trying to get him outside to give him that also gives you half the field. So that means that the guys on that side of the field have to win. The guys coming across have to get there quick. It's a great thing to do, but it eliminates half the field when you do it. But it does protect your offensive line a bit. You just have to block the guys on the front side, make sure you got them out of the way. And for the most part, he looked good. You're right. He didn't get hit a lot. He was quote unquote mobile, but again, he's mobile because they're trying to give the opportunity to the offensive line, because they were like a little worried once they started losing more guys. That's okay, how we're going to do this, and then it worked out for them.
Here's the other thing that I want to bring up with respect to the dynamics of this game, and we were alluding to it somewhat off the top. A lot of people watch this game and they say, well, if the Giants would have had a field goal opportunity at the end of the first half and they didn't have issues with clock management, that you would take those 3 points, then at the end of the game, you'd be setting yourself up for a game-winning field goal. I don't think football is that easy. I think that you can't, Russ, I want to get your thoughts here in a second. I don't think you could play the mathematical equation where you just add 3 points on and everything else stays the same. I think the Giants' philosophy changes in the second half. The Bills' philosophy changes in the second half. So I know a lot of fans who are consuming the game think that it came down to that one play or series. I don't think it's that simple, Russ.
I agree with you. I think Collinsworth might have said that, during the game last night, and I disagreed right away. Everything plays out differently. You don't know how, you're playing with the different spread. It's not 6 points, it's 9 points. To me, what the killer about missing that was not just that they came away with, they didn't get any points, didn't get that field goal. But if you get that field goal, to me, what the big difference was, I can't say what was going on in a locker room. They were deflated a bit. To me, you get the 3 points, and then you're coming out, getting the ball to start the third quarter. Now you have some juice. Now you're revved up. Now the coaches are looking at everybody saying, we're up 9, let's go make it 16. It's a whole different mindset. But to say the lack of not connecting on a field goal to end the first half, that's what cost you the game. I don't buy that. It was just a bad play. It was a screw up. It can't happen. It did happen. You got to move forward.
Unfortunately, guys, most games are decided by 3 to 5 plays during the game, and you don't know which play it's going to be and how it's going to turn out. That play actually did decide the game. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Josh Allen goes, 10 of 11 or 11 of 12. That's a great, half for him, and doing so. His game does not get better than that in the second half. He's playing at the top of his game in the second half to get the 14 points. If the Giants somehow, some way score the field goal before halftime, score another field goal, that means that they're going to be throwing the ball deeper, and that puts the ball in jeopardy. That puts Josh and those guys in more jeopardy throwing the ball deeper. What happens is when you get a lead and you expand the lead, you put more pressure on the other team's offense to make plays. They can't dink and dunk. They have to go deep down the field. Not to mention at the end of the game, and I don't, I hate doing this to refs, but at the end of the game, the refs kind of blew the last call.
Oh boy, did I? Howard, you know what I actually thought? I thought blowing the last call was a maker. I would have questioned the previous call. I thought maybe that could have gone either way. I don't think there was any doubt that was holding on that last call of the game. I don't know if they were making it up or not, but that was terrible.
They had a couple really weird. They had a really bad sequence at the end of the game that, even the touchdown that Josh Allen throws in the end zone, they run a pick play and they take out our safety, like literally take him out. And I don't think they really show it on TV, but they run a pick to take the safety out away from to get the tight end open. The safety is laying on the ground, rolling in pain because they hit him so hard. He lost his breath. And coach goes, "Okay, guys, is that a pick?" They're like, "Hey, coach, I didn't really see it that way." So he's just laying on the ground because, it's and I don't like using that, but sometimes, and I tell people all the time, if you're a winning team, you get more calls. You just do. And the Giants got 1 or 2 calls at the end, heading into the end zone. That last play, I'm like, if it's not egregious, but it was egregious, they should have called it. I don't think that would have made them win necessarily, but the ball on the half-foot line or whatever it is after that,
they would have had another shot at it.
Yeah, they would have had an extra play.
Another bite at the apple. And I don't understand. Part of the game is part of the game. It's human error. So that they'll get some red flags in their mail, but outside of that, this is part of the game.
Well, because we could sit here and analyze officiating till we're blue in the face. Every single game is impacted by a call here, a call there. As you mentioned, Howard, there's 3 to 5 plays whether officiating is involved. But that's why I go back to what happens earlier in the game and the cumulative effect of having all those red zone opportunities. And maybe it doesn't come down to the official throwing an additional flag because Darren Waller was held and you get another play. If you cash in some of those field goals for touchdowns, and to your point, Howard, you put the Bills in a more precarious spot where Josh Allen has to have 15 completions out of 16 or 17 attempts, and he has to throw another touchdown. It completely changes the thinking of Ken Dorsey, the Bills offensive coordinator, and it changes the thinking of Sean McDermott because, see, the Bills, they remained in striking distance. That was a benefit for them the entire second half. The Giants had opportunities to distance themselves, and they let the Bills hang around. And Buffalo, which is a better team in the long run, eventually is going to say, thank you very much, and we'll take it from here. And that's exactly what happened.
Lance, that's fair and unfair at the same time. They're struggling to get themselves back righted. You're playing what I said before the game, when I did the intro in the radio, I said, look, the Giants are shorthanded. They're undermanned. They're missing guys. It's next man up and all that great stuff. The Bills are supposed to win the game. I get it, but make them beat you. Don't give it to them. And I think the Giants did that last night. They made the Bills beat them. They did everything they possibly could do. There weren't any drops in the end zone, right? There were plays getting down close, but there weren't any drops in the end zone outside the mistake of going for it in 14 seconds. And they did pretty much everything they could do. The Bills were going to, we would have thought that there were going to be 8 to 10 sacks in the game. before we got started. That's been the way we've been watching, how we've been consuming the game. That holy smokes, these guys are giving us so many sacks. This game, they rolled out, they got the ball like Wendell Robinson. You got to give him all the credit in the world. He was, as a small guy, he was able to somehow, some way take some pretty good shots because he got the ball upfield. He wasn't always catching and getting down. He was moving the ball upfield. He did a great job, and by him catching the ball short, it made everybody else look good, everywhere else. Waller catching the ball, not going down when he caught the ball, trying to get the extra yards, made a big thing. Slayton came up big in the game, and Hyatt came up. And so I think a lot of good things came out of the game. If the coaches, as they go forward, are they going to keep that kind of philosophy where they're going to try to roll? Like, okay, we may be giving up half the field. We're going to have to try to roll. I think the receivers also are going to look back at this tape and they're going to say, like, hey, you know what? Every other team, when the quarterback is outside the pocket, they don't just hold to their routes. They break off routes. They try to find open spaces. And and it's hard to do when you're not used to doing it. But somebody in the group is going to be like, okay, I can stop right here and I'm open. You saw the receivers from Buffalo do it over and over again. Josh Allen is rolling, waiting, and they just stop. Defenders keep
guys,
going, dump the ball.
Guys, there was also some discussion after the game. I think it might have been questions to Dable in the post game. And well, did you think about running the ball instead of trying to throw to Waller? And I agreed with throwing the ball simply because, listen, if it was a different time, a different offensive line, they were stopped. What was it, 2 or 3 times on 3rd and 1? So to me, listen, I didn't have confidence in it, so I thought they made the right call. I thought, listen, if had they run it and got in, then we would have said great call. But the way what was happening during the game, I thought it was the right call to try and throw and not run it.
Well, they stopped Saquon in the red zone at the very end of the first half, which is what Dable referenced. So there's one example. And Howard, what I would add before I let you continue is you brought Darren Waller onto this roster for a reason, into situations like this, where he's got the height, he could box out defenders, and he had a one-on-one situation. Unfortunately, there was a lot of grabbing that went on, but I would think 99% of the time you want to give him a shot to make a play, which is why you made that trade to bring him in.
And again, when you check to a run, you check to a run, and this goes with percentages also. And I'm pretty sure, thinking about Tyrod, he probably thought of this. They had not failed in the 3rd and 1 this season until that play. So he probably like 3rd and 1, we're right here at the goal line. This is gonna be perfect. I'll just call it. It's gonna be great. I'm gonna check out the pass. We're gonna smash it in. But it's between the time that he's in the game and the first game of the season. There may be one offensive lineman playing in the same position. Everybody else is like all over the place. So they're going to get there. And I think that they're going to be more improved this coming week than they were this past week. My curiosity is going to be, are they going to move the pocket and what kind of routes are they going to be running on the backside when they do?
Well, yeah, I think a lot also depends upon, is Daniel going to be healthy enough to come back? Is Andrew Thomas going to be healthy enough to come back? Listen, we got a glimpse of what the team can do with Saquon Barkley back in the lineup. So let's get all 3 of them together back in the lineup.
I think if you got everybody in the pocket, I think if you get everybody there, I think they're still going to move the pocket because Daniel he throws well from moving the pocket as well, just like Tyrod does. I think they're going to do it because it protects some of the linemen and it helps them get the ball down the field. And it also gives the defense, puts them in conflict because if Hyatt is screaming down the field, if Slayton is screaming down the field, you got Waller and Robinson underneath, there's a lot of people to try to make a difference. The sides of the field are going to be flooded, and it's going to be a little tougher for defenses if they move the pocket like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Wandell because Wandell is becoming a real weapon underneath. I mean, he's quick, he's cat-like, and you know what? He's a tough little guy. He can take a hit.
Well, hopefully he learns to get down and get out of bounds because that's not the size of person you want to get with good contact.
Well, and that's why all the things we're talking about, guys, is basically laying out what is going to define the remainder of the season. And that's going to be whether they have all the weapons at their disposal that Howard was talking about. it's about putting more points on the board because, and I know, Howard, you're going to point to, they've dealt with some injuries. I get that. But, you could also showcase other teams that have also lost personnel and still find a way to at least manufacture points.
There's no team in the NFL that's lost their entire line.
Well, no, but Seattle, the Seahawks, they lost 4 of their 5 starters in that game.
They lost 2 of their guys.
But they were down. They had guys on IR who weren't available coming into the game.
No,
they may have not lost them during the game, Howard, but they were down 4 of their 5 offensive linemen.
Yeah,
okay, I mean that's close in the vicinity. In fairness,
that's continuity if you're playing with the same group of guys from the first game to that. I don't know where you're going with this.
I'm not going anywhere. All I'm saying is Pete Carroll. You're going to tell me he didn't want 2 of his offensive tackles back in the mix? That he was okay with the backups playing?
But if he's been playing with them from day one to now, they grow together. They just grow together. Like some of the time when I'm watching these guys play, I know for a fact that they don't know who to block. And it's not that they don't know who to block because of the scheme. It's like if you're supposed to be doubling, we saw guys run through, we saw a linebacker run through the line and hit the running back in the backfield. Well, they're supposed to be doubling the down guy and going up to the second level to get the guy. No one comes off. No one's coming off because you're not sure who's supposed to come off, or you're not sure when you're supposed to come off. And that comes with continuity and practice and reps together. That doesn't come with, you just, well, I'm going to plug you in and we're going to do that. Combination blocks, all the stuff they do. The 300-pound ballerinas, they got to be in step. They're the, I don't know, the Rockettes, if you want to call them. If they're not all together and practicing together all the time, it's really hard for them to do it. And I'm not making an excuse for them. I just know for a fact it's hard for them to do it.
Sure, no, communication and chemistry are key. I'm not disputing that at all. I'm just saying big picture overall, whether they get some guys back or not, the point total has to increase. Because, Howard, in the 5 losses, they've scored 16 points or less in all 5 games. I don't think that's a coincidence.
They haven't scored
less than 10
either.
points in 3 of those 5.
No, but you're right.
They haven't scored a touchdown in the last 3.
I think coming off this game, look, I'll be frank with you. I don't think there are too many people. I know I didn't give the Giants a chance to win this game. I mean, nobody. The most ardent Giants fan was looking at gloom and doom. You were going into a tough building to play against a powerhouse team with a depleted offensive line. And you know what? To Howard's point, they stuck it out. They improved as the game went on. We got to see a difference. We certainly got to see a difference with Saquon. So to be frank with you, I'm more confident now moving forward. Saquon's back. You get Daniel back. You get Andrew Thomas back. I got to see glimpses of what Hyatt can do and different things. Yeah, I think we're going to see improvement. I'm going to be real surprised if we don't get a couple of touchdowns against the Commanders. I really will.
And I don't know when John Michael Schmidt's coming back. When he comes back, that's going to make a huge difference as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about multiple starters. And, when Andrew Thomas comes back, and to your point, Howard, you're going to have the same guys hopefully playing next to one another for multiple games, and maybe I should say multiple series at this point. Forget games. Let's get through multiple series.
If we get through
that
one
should
series,
ultimately make a difference, 100%. And I think the most encouraging aspect is if the movement to the pocket helped them navigate a Buffalo Bills defensive front, guys, that led the NFL in sacks coming in and also led the NFL in takeaways. They protected the ball, and they didn't allow the Bills to damage that game. So you get a Washington team that we know has 4 former first-round picks who can be just as disruptive. If you handled Buffalo quite well, then yes, I would agree. That's encouraging going up against a Washington team that doesn't have the same track record coming in as the Buffalo Bills did.
Well, that hasn't been helpful so far. So we just hope they play better all around.
Amen to that. Yeah, I just think we got, again. I'll go back to I say it all the time. It's one of my favorite lines. How your old coach Parcells, no medals for trying, but their effort to me last night was a much better effort than I had seen in previous weeks. There was a cohesiveness that was missing. And whatever it was, I'm not saying the guys weren't trying, but their effort last night was a job well done. It just wasn't good enough.
Yeah, it wasn't they weren't trying or were trying. I just thought they had a better attitude towards the game. I thought they were really trying to, for whatever reason, there was a much more confidence, and they really got after it. Whether it's the one guy, Pugh, or somebody else, but they really got after it.
Well, I think also the biggest difference was the fundamentals on both sides of the ball. I mean, Russ, you even hit on this. On defense, we had been talking about missed tackles left and right on the defensive side of the ball. You really weren't seeing any of that. You were seeing guys in position, hustling to the ball, not allowing the Bills to get that slippery play or two. You know, how many times did we watch Stephon Diggs against the Dolphins slip out of 2 tackles, take it to the house? There was none of that. There weren't a whole lot of explosive plays. So that was cleaned up from an effort standpoint. And then on offense, Howard hit on, there wasn't that drop. There wasn't that egregious mishap. I'll give you that. I still stand by, though, if you get the ball twice where your starting field position is your own 42 and your own 44, which led to 2 field goals, that whether or not there was an egregious play or not, you need to walk away with a touchdown, at least in one of those circumstances. That's all I'm saying, Howard. I understand that, there were things that you could point to and say, well, the Giants didn't do anything wrong. It's just on the surface. When you start at that position and the Bills are giving you half the field, a team like that, you got to find a way to punch it in. That's pretty much my main point.
Okay. Won't argue.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm a little surprised. Maybe this is an indication we should ease out of the Giants hangout here because
I'm not arguing because no matter what I tell you, you're going to keep going back to the same thing, saying they got to do it. Like if you played the 85 Bears, which you're not, they didn't play the 85 Bears. You weren't scoring. I don't care where you got the ball, and that means that when you're outmanned and outgunned. I was impressed and happy with the quote unquote progress, especially how they did things. You're focusing on they should have done better. I'm like, I was happy they got where they were. The improvement was overwhelming. That's what I'm looking at. The fact that they didn't get it in the end zone, I'm like, shows that they're getting steps and steps closer to doing and accomplishing their goal. And I'm not defending them or whatever. I'm just saying that I see the improvement, even with the line being the way it is. If they have the same amount of improvement this following week, I expect even a bigger difference.
Well, speaking of improvement, go ahead, Russ. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I think we can all agree. Yes, we have seen the improvement, but yes, even though we've seen the improvement, we've got to see more points because unless we see more points, we're all going to be doing this each and every week. So let's.
I appreciate it. From Dallas to today, I'll take what I'm looking at.
Howard's measuring the glass, and he's pointing to the fact that it's half full for him, and that's fine. And we're just looking at the whole glass, okay? Mm-hmm. We want it to be right at the top where it's overflowing, Howard. We want to make sure that your thirst is quenched at some point.
Well, yes. now Lance, you're being a little greedy because the glass has been empty, but bone dry for a long time. So
like I said,
half full. I like that.
Okay, that's fair. We'll continue this analogy. I like
there's something in the glass. You guys are half empty. There's something in the glass. Let's move on.
Before we weren't even getting a shot glass.
No, we were still washing out the glass, the soap in the water. We were cleaning it from the previous season. So, okay, I think the analogy has come full circle. The one thing, though, I do want to leave us with here, speaking of improvement, okay, I'll go with Howard's theme. This was the first time in 3 Giants Hangout programs for the audience that watches us as opposed to listens that Howard's camera cooperated.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Right? I mean, so forget the Giants on-field product, Howard. Your technology made huge strides over the span of the last few weeks. I'm impressed. I mean, that's what the conversation should have been about.
Like the Giants, I'm getting a little better every week. Let's leave it.
There you go. And we can absolutely all agree on that front. And that will wrap up the latest edition of the Giants Hangout. As we are with you each and every week, it is our weekly roundtable discussion. We recap the latest game. We look ahead as well. Lance Meadow, Russ Salzberg, Howard Cross with you. You can check it out on Giants.com, the mobile app, and your favorite podcast platform. We're out.